no later than August 8, with the goal of reaching it by August 18. However, the two sides missed the deadline. Corneille Nangaa, the leader of the Congo River Alliance, AFC, accused the government forces and allied militias of carrying out attacks in South Kivu in eastern Congo. Onto this now, Malawi's Electoral Commission, MEC, says it is advancing in its preparations for the 16th of September 2025 general elections, where citizens will elect a president, members of parliament, councillors of their choice. It says ballot papers has started coming to the country in several consignments after landing at Kamuzu International Airport in Lilongwe. Channel Africa's correspondent in Malawi, George Mhango.
So the first consignment did arrive yesterday around 3:30 p.m. Central African time, as opposed to the actual time of 11:30 a.m. in the morning hours. There was a delay, which the Electoral Commission justified to say it had to do with the refueling system in Nairobi, Kenya. But otherwise, the consignment was well received. It's to do with 108 constituencies. So the last consignment, according to the electoral body, is on September 6 at equally the same time of 11 a.m.
An humanitarian organization in Sudan says that the situation in the city of Al-Shafir in Sudan's North Darfur remains dire. It's reported that at least 600,000 people, almost half of them being children, have been displaced from Al-Shafir. Close to 300,000 are still trapped, cut from aid and food. The humanitarian situation worsened last night with a massive landslide that's killed at least 1,000 people in the remote Mara Mountains in western Sudan. Africa Peace and Conflict analyst Charles Newkonge says the humanitarian situation is dire.
It's not just a natural disaster. It's a disaster which only comes to amplify the catastrophic impact of the Sudan's war, which largely leaves the country reeling from some of the pre-existing challenges, whether it is the drop in the potential for human survival in the country, where individuals live on an average of $750, which is about $15,000 per annum. You have about 12 million internally displaced. About 180,000 people have died so far since 2023 because of the conflict. And you have about 4 million further refugees.
And rescuers on helicopters are continuing to search for the ruins of remote villages in eastern Afghanistan for survivors of a powerful earthquake that has killed 800 people and injured 1,800 others. Many are feared trapped under the rubble of their homes after the magnitude 6 earthquake struck on Sunday near the country's border with Pakistan. Authorities searched by air for the second day today as roads blocked with debris and the mountainous terrain in the affected areas made land travel difficult. The Taliban government has appealed for international help. Dr. Diamala Mala is a chief humanitarian officer at Aid Agency Care.
In a matter of minutes, thousands have lost everything that they had, their belongings, their sense of safety. It is very difficult for aid workers to reach the most vulnerable people. It's a hugely urgent situation. People immediately need shelter, food, water, medical care, and also cooking items and warm clothes.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Bafana head coach Hugo Broos issues a passionate call ahead of pivotal World Cup qualifiers, while Carlos Alcaraz as well as Novak Djokovic on a US Open collision course. Details at 12:30.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines and Matapelo Mahapi with our news update. It is 12:07 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, an OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Now join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Well, today on hashtag Africa Update Ask, a flotilla of boats heading for Gaza has departed from Barcelona carrying 350 pro-Palestinian activists and stocked with medical and food supplies. The global Sumud flotilla mission plans to launch in 2 batches. Now, the first from Barcelona and the second from Tunis. And our question to you today is, what message do you have for those aboard the flotilla? And, share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update Us.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is 12:09 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. And we look at our first story, where we are going to Sudan. And in Sudan, we're going to be focusing on what's unfolding there with regards to the Sudanese President Salva Kiir having fired 3 ministers and a governor in his latest cabinet reshuffle. No reasons have been given for the dismissals. The nation became the world's newest country in 2011 after ceding from Sudan, but has been engulfed by civil war after Kiir and his deputy Riek Machar fell out. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by political analyst Dr. David Matanga. Dr. Matanga, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, my sister. Good afternoon, Africa, and good afternoon, the entire world. Thank you very much. And we thank God for bringing us here again to talk about Africa.
Dr. Matanga, is there anything untoward regarding these dismissals? What are the reasons behind it? Nothing has been spoken of.
Since independence, some of us helped a lot to get South Sudan independence. You remember the wars that took place between the Lord Resistance Army and the government of Uganda, SPLA, and the government of Khartoum, until we hammered the peace agreement in Uganda, in Juba. I was part of that negotiating team that brought about the removal of warring parties out of South Sudan, and South Sudan got independence. But since that time, South Sudan has remained a fragile state, a state where people kill each other. You remember the first president of South Sudan died in a helicopter crash, and then Mr. Salva Kiir took over power. No sooner had they taken over power than in 3 months, a war broke out. And then in 3 years, a war broke out. They split. Dr. Riek Machar, a very good guy, who does peace, who helped us to hammer peace in Uganda, fought against, and they all clashed. And South Sudan has been at the brink of disaster, from disaster and disaster. It is not a country you can talk about.
Now, of those that have been named as the replacements, are they from Kiir's party? And if so, could it mean that the president is looking at changing the landscape of the cabinet?
The president himself is part and parcel of the problem. And another thing that I want to say is IGAD is to blame the peace negotiators that went out to hammer the peace agreement of South Sudan erred. You cannot in life ever hammer a peace agreement without accountability. Accountability is key to any redemption strategy for a country to come and have peace. That was not done. That failed. The peace mediators, negotiators failed South Sudan. Since this agreement of coming together, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir was hammered, there has never been harmony. They all walk with pistols, ready to kill each other. Salva Kiir is a grown-up guy who I know very well. Riek Machar, an educated man whom I know very well. Why do they always want to kill each other? Ethnicity has been rampant, rife. Even in this selection is based on ethnicity. The sackings are based on ethnicity. That is where the problem is. We have not healed. People have not healed from the past wounds. They need to heal first. And that is what the mediators failed to do, to create accountability, a mechanism where people heal before they take up posts, which is now leading to sacking, summary execution, killings, a more, almost a war zone. It's a war zone as we speak right now. Lulu, Riek Machar is under house arrest with their wife. They eat food from their house. They don't move out of their compound. That's what the South Sudan is. That's what we have in South Sudan, Juba.
Now, moving from South Sudan to the DRC, the Congo River Alliance accusing the government of violating agreements aimed at ending the conflict. Are these accusations by Corneille Nangaa, the leader of the AFC, true?
Yes, 100% true. I have told you, Lulu, I am one of the few people in Africa who speaks my mind. If you want to kill me, I've reached the time to go home. God will take me and welcome me. I speak my mind. You will never solve the problem of Congo without looking at Congo in a different way. I have said it and I will continue to say it here. You can do 1 million negotiations. You can do every pact you can sign. I have been there. Sun City, Congo needs to be rearranged. That's the word. Rearrange Congo. Because the East does not like the West does not like the East. The West has suspicion that the East are not Congolese. Therefore, you see, you arrange now a peace process in Qatar. Mr. Trump, our man across Atlantic, the guy, the unpredictable president of your United States of America, calls the people. They sit down. No sooner had the ink dried on the paper than the Congolese government spokesman minister comes and said, we shall not allow a M23 into our army. What agreement are you sorting out? In Qatar, we are wasting time. We went to Qatar. And I told you, you and I told you here,
yes, we had
that there will be no peace. Yes, there will be no peace in DRC Congo until Congo is rearranged like a Yugoslavia. Why are these Western countries? Why are these European countries? Why is France, which arranged Yugoslavia, why have they not rearranged us? Why? The West does not like the East. Let's face facts. The West, Tshisekedi calls the M23 Tutsi. He calls them Tutsi. He calls them names. He isolates them in the army. He doesn't want to integrate them in the army. What do these young men do? They have come to crowd in our country, Uganda. What do? We're refugees. We also have our own problems. Let me tell you, the only problem, anybody tackling Congo, if you have gone to school, unless you went to a wrong university, if you have gone to school and you did not study and they're stripped outside the classroom in a compound, is when you can say you'll have an agreement in DRC Congo. You can only have an agreement in DRC Congo, my sister, if you rearrange Congo. Either you give them autonomous states or semi-autonomous decentralization system of governance, where states can have powers and you hold on defense, treasury, and foreign affairs, and strengthen the same systems down. There are people in Congo who don't know Mobutu died. Is this a country that you want to tell me it will ever bring peace?
Now, Dr. Matanga,
yes.
With all these peace summits and discussions and seeing during the past weekend with President Felix Tshisekedi just basically saying that, quote, Congolese who want to rebuild their country and emerge from the crisis, unquote, could we see this as the president basically refusing to have talks with the AFC? With this in mind, what needs to happen? You speak of dismantling of the DRC, Yugoslavia style, but are they ready to do that? Because clearly it doesn't seem like.
The biggest problem of Congo is Tshisekedi. Yes, 240 standing army on Congolese soil. You people, we all went to school. We don't speak like we did not go to school. 240 standing armies on Congo's soil. How are you going to solve that problem? By signing an agreement with only one group? How? Tell me. The biggest problem is Tshisekedi. I think the father was the best person. Tshisekedi has let me down. I remember the father very well in Paris whenever some of us would go there to visit him. Intelligent man. But this one is not intelligent at all. And we must tell the truth. He's one of the people creating chaos. How do you lock out a former President Kabila? Tell him not to come. Charge him with treason and want him arrested. When he gave you power, is this the type you can't get? What this? Which Congo do you want to rebuild? There are people in Congo who don't know that Tshisekedi is the president. Yes, in those forests. Did you know that? They don't know. They have never voted for anybody. So which country is this? Are you going to rearrange that we re-emerge as Congolese?
Yeah.
You are just...
Well, Dr. Matanga, unfortunately, we have run out of time and I have to leave it there for today. But thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much, my sister. All the time, let me be frank and let me be hated in Africa, but let me speak the truth. Rearrange Congo. Congo, Nigeria need rearrangement. They are very bad states on African continent. Goodbye.
That's Dr. David Matanga, political analyst, who's quite passionate about African issues, as you have heard. It is 20 after 12 Central African time.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is 21 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A flotilla of boats heading for Gaza has departed from Barcelona, and the boats are carrying 350 pro-Palestinian activists and stocked with medical and food supplies. Now, the global Sumud flotilla mission plans to launch in two batches, the first batch from Barcelona and the second from Tunis on September the 4th. Activists hope the boats will converge in the Mediterranean before sailing towards Gaza, a trip that is estimated to take 7 or 8 days. And to tell us more, we are joined by Jared Sachs, a member of the South African Jews for a Free Palestine and an activist, academic and writer on leftist politics and social movements, who is part of those heading for Gaza. Jared, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Now, Jared, tell us about your participation. Why is it so important for you to be a part of this and just the whole mission?
Yeah, sure. So me personally, a lot of what is being done in Palestine against the Palestinians by Israel, it's being done in my name as a Jew, and so for me, it's really important to counter the perception that somehow all Jews support what Israel is doing, and that's not true. It's also, I also feel a responsibility because of what happened to Jews in the Holocaust, that it should never happen again. And right now it is happening again in Gaza. So that is part of my motivation. I also am an activist for Palestine for a long time. And, it's been very difficult over the past 2 years watching what has happened and trying my best to do something about it. But it's been very difficult to stop this genocide. So for me, this flotilla is a new way of trying to change things. And I'm hoping that this will create enough pressure to help put things over the edge, and at very least they will open up the borders to aid, and maybe eventually put a stop to the genocide.
Now, the Global March to Gaza mobilized in March and brought over 4,000 participants from across the world to Cairo in Egypt to march to Rafah. Now, were you part of this group?
Yes, I was part of the Global March to Gaza. We had a delegation of over 50 people from South Africa. And we tried to march to Gaza, but the Egyptian government blocked us. Even though they said they claim publicly to support the Palestinians, in their actions, they really are working with Israel and coordinating with Israel. And our march, Global March to Gaza through Egypt, exposed Egypt's complicity in the genocide that's going on in Gaza.
And are you hopeful that the flotilla will have access to Gaza? And are you ready mentally to be detained? Because these are possibilities of what may happen if you don't get access.
Yeah. Well, look, we can't. I can't tell you what's going to happen. We're hoping that we get all the way to Gaza and Israel lets us go through, and we are able to provide aid and support the people of Gaza. But if they do intercept us, we will likely be detained. There might be violence from the Israeli army, because there has been in previous flotillas. But hopefully they won't treat us too badly, and we'll be detained. But the detention will expose them for who they are, because this is part of their blockade. They are not letting anyone in to provide food for the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza are starving. And we are doing this to expose Israel's actions, expose what Israel is doing, that they're starving the people of Gaza. And so whatever they do to us, it doesn't matter, as long as we do our best to challenge this blockade.
And your plan of action, say everything goes smoothly, you're allowed access, and you're allowed to hand over and make sure that people that need medical supplies and food supplies, which is generally almost literally everyone at this point in time. What is the plan of action once you get there and you have full access?
Well, if we get there, we will be distributing the aid. We'll probably partner with local organizations, and the aid will be distributed. And then we'll call on more flotillas and larger boats to come with even more aid to continue to provide food for the people of Gaza.
Well, Jared, Earlier on I asked about the mental side of things in terms of you being ready, but also talk to us about, I'm sure you've engaged with people that you are going to be traveling with. And what is their thinking, as you embark on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're going through non-violence training as all the participants on the boat here in Tunisia, and it's it's an important thing because this is a non-violent movement. We're here on a humanitarian mission. We're not here to fight, and we're the ones acting legally. It's Israel who is illegally blockading Gaza. It's illegal according to international law, and we have every right to do what we're doing. And so the people here I think are steadfast. We are, I'm sure many people are nervous. I'm nervous. Everyone's a bit nervous, but we're worried about what Israel might do to us. But what they could do to us is nothing compared to what the people of Palestine and Gaza have been subject to.
Well, Jared, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Safe journey, and hopefully we'll be able to speak to you once you are back in Egypt. What's the plan? How long are you going to be there for? And when do you return home?
So we're in Tunisia right now, and we disembark. We get on the boats in a few days, and then we'll probably be traveling for about 7 days to Gaza, and then we'll see what happens. If we get to Gaza, we'll be there for a while. I don't know how long, but if we get intercepted, it's really up to Israel what is done with us. I don't know how long they will detain us and what they will do to us. So it's hard to gauge what's going to happen, but we remain steadfast. We have Sumud as our name puts it. And we're not going to give up until Palestine is free.
When you say you have Sumud as a name to protect you, what does Sumud mean?
As I understand it, maybe I shouldn't be quoted on this, but it's as I understand it's a word that comes from Palestine, and it means having steadfastness and not giving up.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Okay, thank you so much.
That is Jared Sachs, a member of the South African Jews for a Free Palestine and an activist, academic and writer on leftist politics and social movements, who is part of those heading for Gaza. And our question to you today is, what message do you want to send to those aboard the flotilla? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us. Well, it is 12:30 and our news headlines up next with Matapelo Mohapi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu, and good afternoon. Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye believes Africa can contribute to global food security by leveraging its youth and vast resources. Diomaye Faye says Africa has the potential to build food sovereignty through investments in water management, innovation, local processing, and intra-African trade. And the Congo River Alliance, including the M23 rebels, accuses the government of violating agreements aimed at ending the conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The M23 group has intensified fighting, capturing 2 largest cities. And the U.S. Congress returns with less than a month left to perform one of its core functions, keeping federal agencies funded and averting a partial government shutdown. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports. On Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. I am Mosibudi Makura with your latest sports news at the SAWA. So, full delegation of Rwanda's Amavubi Stars are expected to depart for Nigeria later on today and will proceed to the city of Oyo, where they will face the Super Eagles on the 6th of September in a FIFA World Cup qualifier. So the team started the intensive training sessions at the Amahoro Stadium on Monday, preparing for the upcoming 2 World Cup qualifiers. The first one against Nigeria, while the second one will be against Zimbabwe. The match day 7 encounter will be important for the Super Eagles as well as Rwanda, who are both well adrift of the group leaders South Africa, who are currently on 13 points. This is prior now to the decision of FIFA on their alleged use of an ineligible player in a win over Lesotho in March of this year. So Rwanda are second in the group with about 8 points and are level on the same points with Benin, with Nigeria in 4th place on 4 points. Well, Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce has called on Orlando Pirates midfielder Sipho Mbule as a replacement for the injured Patrick Maswangai for back-to-back 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho as well as Nigeria. All the players called to the squad include Mbule have reported for camp except Germany-based Ime Ogon, and the team has had their first training session at the Dobsonville Stadium in the south of Johannesburg on Monday. The team will have 2 more training sessions on Tuesday and Wednesday before leaving for Bloemfontein, that's in the Free State province, where they'll play Lesotho in the first qualifier on Friday. Bruce says Mbule has the qualities that are looking for as a player in the Bafana setup, and will now take the role of Maswangai, who was earmarked for that role with the absence of Themba Zwane not having featured for Bafana since he was injured at the AFCON World Cup last year.
We can't take that risk. This replacement is Sipho Mbule. Why Sipho Mbule? I think everybody agrees that he's a player with much qualities, and I have to agree also that the past years we didn't really see what we expected from a player like that. But he's an experienced player, and he's a player, one of those players who can play on that position.
Meanwhile, on to local football news. Orlando Pirates coach Abdelislam Wadu has been hospitalized after a car accident along with 5 others from the club. The statement from the club was released earlier this morning. So Wadu and the others were hit by a car on Sunday night after their team bus stopped at a scene of an accident after returning to Johannesburg following their 3-0 win over Chipa United in the Betway Premiership match played at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium on Sunday. Defender Thapelo Qoki has also been hurt and has been recovering, should I say, in hospital, including the goalkeeper Tyrone Damons, who had his leg broken in 3 places and underwent surgery on Monday. The accident raises now concerns as well as questions about Pirates' preparations for the MTN8 final against Stellenbosch FC in Nelspruit on the 13th of September. In cricket news now, Proteas batter and captain Themba Bavuma says veteran batter David Miller remains firmly in contention for future selection despite being unavailable for the 3-match ODI series against England. Miller, who turned out for the North Superchargers in the 100 tournament, was not considered for the ODIs starting later on today at the Headingley Stadium, but will rejoin the squad for the T20 leg of the tour. The skipper says both Matthew Britsky as well as Kagiso Rabada, who picked up injuries on the recent tour of Australia, remain unavailable for selection as a precaution.
We are still managing certain guys from a workload, injury point of view. Kagiso Rabada, Matthew Britsky, they're still on that workload management, as they call it.
And finally, Carlos Alcaraz as well as Novak Djokovic could set up a heavyweight clash at the US Open on Tuesday, while Aryna Sabalenka aims to take another step towards defending her title. So the Spanish second seed Alcaraz is the only man yet to concede a set at this year's tournament as he goes in search for a second US Open title and a 6th Grand Slam overall. The 22-year-old will take on Czech Republican 20th seed player Jiří Lečeka, who is in the quarterfinals of a major tournament for only a second time in his history. The Checker defeated Alcaraz in Doha in their only meeting on the hard courts, with the Spaniard now getting the better of the Czech in another 3-set tussle at Queen's in June of this year. So the winner of that match will face either 24-time Grand Slam champion Novak Djokovic or Taylor Fritz of the USA, who was last year's US Open runner-up and only American man left in this year's draw. So history undoubtedly favours Djokovic, as the Serbian star has won all 10 meetings against Taylor Fritz, but will also be on guard against Fritz. And there's also a lot of concerns about his injury, his back issues that Novak Djokovic has faced in his first 3 matches at this year's tournament. It's 12:37 p.m. Central African Time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le Diamant Rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des Lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you. With your business news, good afternoon. I am Chandruko Ligege. Tax experts are sounding the alarm over the risks of blindly accepting South African Revenue Service tax auto assessment, cautioning that many taxpayers may be exposing themselves to penalties, reversals or orders by unknowingly submitting incomplete or inaccurate returns. Director at Tax Team Daniel Swegas says South Africans ultimately have the liability to make sure that the assessment is actually correct.
We actually want to praise SARS for what they've been able to do. I think the fact that they've embraced technology to really make it really simple and easy for South Africans to be compliant is fantastic. And
South Africa's Barloworld says its investigation into U.S. export control regulations found apparent violations by the company, which it is addressing through undisclosed actions. The probe, however, cleared the company of any breaches of U.S. sanctions. Barloworld says it has submitted the final report to U.S. authorities and concluded the investigation, meeting a key condition for its pending takeover acquisition. The takeover bid by a consortium of the company's former executives and Saudi Arabian investor Zahid Group was announced earlier in June and conditionally approved by the South African Competition Tribunal in August. The National Union of Mine Workers of South Africa has expressed shock over looming job cuts of over 3,000 employees at Glencore and Samanco mines. NUM is calling on Glencore and Samanco to negotiate constructively. This follows Glencore's confirmation that it has triggered a Section 189 retrenchment process under the Labour Relations Act effective from the 1st of September. NUM Chief Negotiator Lefty Mashiro.
We are sitting at the highest peak of unemployment in South Africa. We are talking around about 3,000. It's a lot of sections. As a result, we are talking about 3,000 employees to be affected by this thing.
A report has found that Western Balkans criminal groups, which are among Europe's top cocaine traffickers, are entrenching themselves in West Africa in a sign of region's growing significance on the smuggling route from Latin America to the EU. Rising demand for cocaine in Europe, combined with increased enforcement along direct routes from Latin America and the significant expansion of maritime ports in West Africa, has for several years pushed smugglers to increase trade through Senegal, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. It also called for increased data collection and smarter targeting that focused on brokers in the trade. European shares slipped, dragged by Nestlé after the sweet food giant ousted Chief Executive Laurent Freixe a year into his tenure, while investors awaited an inflation report later in the day. The stock 600 index lost 0.1% and was at 550.48 points, as with the food and beverage sector leading sectoral declines with a 1.2% drop. Nestlé lost 3.2% as Freixe was removed from failing to disclose a romantic relationship with a subordinate. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529. In Botswana, 13 pula 29. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 328. Zambia 23 kwacha 55. BRICS countries, $1 is Brazil is trading at 5 real 43. Russia 80 rubles 24, India 88 rupee 11, China 71.13, South Africa 17 rand 60 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,478, platinum at $1,388 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $68.85 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Wewe ni mjasiriamali unajihusisha na biashara ya kuuza dawa. Jaribu kutuambia kwanza, kwa nini ulianzisha biashara hiyo?
Tutasema kwamba maisha ya kila siku ni kwamba mtu na maisha ya kuweza kujitegemea. Usitegemee kuajiriwa, lakini utegemee kujiajiri, na baadaye utaweza ukaajiri wengine. Na hiyo ilinipa msukumo mkubwa kwa kuweza kujiajiri na kampuni hii kwa ajili ya kuweza kuwasaidia wale ambao wanahangaika zaidi.
Unauza aina gani ya dawa?
Unasema ni dawa, lakini kwetu sisi tunaita kama vile ni pipi, ambayo ni virutubisho ambavyo vinakwenda kusaidia kwa wale ambao wanatatizwa na aina tofauti ya magonjwa.
Virutubisho hivyo sasa vinatibu magonjwa gani?
Virutubisho hivi vinatunza magonjwa kama vile ya kisukari, shinikizo la damu.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It is at 12:45 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. South Africa's Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen is concerned about reports of livestock showing signs of foot and mouth disease being moved from one area to the next with no protocols being adhered to. This as the department battles to contain foot and mouth disease. Addressing the media and Parliament, Steenhuisen said they had success with the containment and prevention of the disease in the Eastern Cape province. However, due to movement of infected animals, the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Mpumalanga and the Northwest are still experiencing challenges. Zelene Merrington has more.
According to the minister, he grapples with the issue of foot and mouth disease every day.
Believe you me, FMD, I wake up in the morning worrying about FMD and worrying what we can do. And I go to sleep every night worrying about it.
His department is doing all it can, working closely with industry role players and applying as much resources to it as possible. But Steenhuisen says it is alarming how many livestock producers are not adhering to the regulations.
There are far too many reports of farmers moving cattle showing clinical signs of disease, or just simply treating them privately and not reporting them. This is deeply concerning to us and is highly irresponsible, because such behavior can cause huge economic harm to far too many of our producers and the sector. These actions not only contravene legal directives, but also risk entrenching foot-and-mouth disease as endemic in South Africa.
The department has set up an extensive task team consisting of very senior government officials as well as industry role players to make sure that the problem is addressed.
As I pledged at this Bosbarat, an industry government task team on animal disease prevention, management, control will now be established. And I wish to make the announcement today about who will be sitting on this incredibly important team. Government and the department, the ministry, will be represented by Dr. Emily Mogajani, who is the Chief Director, Biosecurity Coordination, Dr. Modasani, Chief Director, Animal Health and Production, Dr. Nomsa Mnisi, the Director of Biosecurity Support Services.
Steenhuisen says he is not of the opinion that the disease is out of control. Zelene Merrington, Parliament.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:48 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The M20 summit, attended by experts and media professionals, continues in Johannesburg in the Gauteng province of South Africa. Our topics under discussion at the two-day summit include contemporary challenges facing journalists, the narrative needed to move forward, and the trends within the media sector. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Zimbabwean journalist Hopewell Chinono. Hopewell, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Now, Hopewell, how important are such summits for the African continent?
I think they're very important because they are a quick reminder of the struggles and the journey that is still to be traveled by African journalists and media experts. We live in a world where just today or yesterday, a Lesotho journalist and editor was arrested for wanting to write a story against corruption, exposing part of the political elite in that country. And so these kind of summits, they allow those in power to understand the predicament that is faced and the struggles that need to be fought, and they help people come up with ideas and also to help people figure out which specific areas need their attention and who needs the help.
Now, as media, where are our shortcomings, and are we doing enough to highlight the issues on the continent?
I think we're doing as much as we can. The problem that we have is that a lot of media houses operate on the basis of colonial borders. So you find that if I write something about South Africa, you find South Africans coming and saying, oh, why do you write about our country? Why don't you write about your own country? So that colonial mentality, it's still in us. And the other problem is there are countries that are not really in, their populations don't know much about other parts of Africa. And this is not because the journalists are not trying. It's because that the funding that is available to do the work, because journalism costs money, is very, very, very small. And so you find that journalists end up just covering their local page. And dictators love that, because it means we cannot report about an uprising in another country, because it gives an idea to people. Let's say in Zimbabwe, if I'm reporting reporting from Zimbabwe about an uprising in another country, it puts ideas in the hearts and minds of Zimbabweans to say this can be done, and that is what dictatorships don't want. So they make it very difficult for journalists to cover big patches, but ideally that's what we should do. And that's why you find that Africa is one of the places where the general public are very ignorant about other Africans, except about their own specific countries.
Now, speaking of that, press freedom, a major issue in many countries on the African continent. What can we do, or what can be done to overcome this?
I think we have got the laws in place, and we have got regional protocols in place. So if you take, for example, SADC, the laws are in place, the regulations are in place, but the political will to enforce them is not there. So you find that if journalists are arrested in Harare for doing their work, you'd expect other countries like South Africa, Botswana to speak out, but they don't. What ends up happening is that it's Western countries that stand up for those rights. But this is slightly changing now because with the emergence of or re-emergence of Donald Trump, he doesn't respect the press. He lies a lot, and he knows that the press exposes those lies. So he has given a sort of a carte blanche, the right to do as you wish to other countries that used to look up to America as a beacon of democracy, free speech, and free press. But that's no longer the case. But we still have to continue working hard as practitioners, as journalists, as media experts, to make sure that we help those that are in places like Zimbabwe, where there is repression, where there's intimidation, where state power is used to silence the voices of not only the people but the media also.
But now, why is this the case? You touched on something that's very key, the fact that even when there is a crisis in neighboring countries and it's reported on, other African leaders don't respond or don't react to what's happening. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of nudging for leaders to speak up against something that is being done against the media or against activists that are quite vocal.
Well, you know, if you look at SADC, it's a trade union of dictators, and those that are not dictators, they don't speak because of personal interests. You'll find that there are people in the South African government that have financial interests in Zimbabwe, and all the way to the DRC. So when something happens, they don't consider the greater good of the region or national interest of their country. They consider the greater good of their own pocket. So they don't pursue the protocols that are already written on how the media is supposed to be given space to do its work. So if you take, for example, in South Africa, President Ramaphosa could have done a lot more to try and bring countries like Zimbabwe to understand that a country cannot be normal without a free press. But you find that because of the personal relationships that they have, those relationships will trump the greater good of having a free press, media that is not muzzled, and they won't even mention, even privately, that what you're doing is bad. And because it seems like they emulate, they wish they could have the same power that people like dictators like Mnangagwa have got.
Now, looking at the integrity of the media, what are some of the risks that we should be concerned about?
I think the biggest problem that we face today is that we have cartels, criminal cartels, that go across the region, poisoning the space for media, using their money to corrupt journalists who are badly paid. So if you look at a country like Zimbabwe, you find that one of the biggest media houses is not paid its journalists for over 4 or 5 months, and they become susceptible to bribes, and stories are killed, and so we really need to work hard to make sure that the media space is not just respected in terms of freedom, but that the remuneration is also good. If it's not good, you end up in a situation where journalists are bought not to write certain stories, and that becomes detrimental to the country. Corrupt individuals, corrupt cartels will do the same thing, and you end up with a situation where corruption goes unchecked.
I hope, Paul, just in wrapping up, AI, deepfake has hit the world. How can media use that to change the landscape of the media?
I think AI is a good tool because it helps us to do our work much quicker and much smarter than before. You just put in a question there and you get the answers. But the tragedy of the flip side of AI is that there are now a lot of deepfake videos on YouTube, and you see them being shared and people thinking that this is true. It becomes very difficult for you to say, no, this is not true. This is AI. This is being done to try and deceive you, because they target groups that have certain expectations. So one of a good example is the stuff that comes out about President Traore. Most of it is not true, but because people are in love with the idea of what's being said, they fall for it. And so that's the flip side of AI, but it is a good tool to use as a journalist. A lot of people who do not have money to run newsrooms now use AI to be the sub-editor of their text. They create the text and AI does that, the sub-editing for them. It makes it quicker to turn around stories and so forth.
Well, Hopewell, it's been a pleasure. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much.
That's Zimbabwean journalist Hopewell Chinono joining us on the line. Well, it is that time of the day where we say a happy Tuesday to Dabukole Kuleni of the Upside. Hello.
Hello, Lulu. How are you?
Well, thanks, and you?
Love the outfit.
Thank you.
Yes, here's what's coming up on the show this afternoon. First up, we get into conversation about how men are redefining masculinity through style, grooming, and self-expression. Right, and then our second conversation will be with a 23-year-old accountant who is using poetry to make mathematics come alive for struggling students.
Why didn't we have that during our time?
We were not, the people back then were not as creative and as expressive as the current generation. So shout out to this young man.
Yes.
And he'll be joining us in studio, by the way, for that conversation. And then we get into conversation with the director and the lead cast for the film that launched last month called Hunting Jessica Brock. That is a retired Special Forces agent who must battle a group of vengeful psychopaths and the African wilderness to get back to her daughter. That's all coming up The Upside.
Well, The Upside coming up at the top of the hour with Dabukole Kuleni and Matsiko Musito. From myself, Lulu Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, thank you to our producer, Tracy Bumgard, our technical operator, Ndando Lutuli, and social media, Fiso Hlope and Talent Butelezi. It's been a great one. Continue with us on our social media platforms, and let's do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.